Deep within the archives of human belief, locked away in the vaults of theology, there are questions. Questions so fundamental, so deeply unsettling that they threaten to shake the very foundations of faith. They are the whispers in the back of the church, the doubts that surface in the dead of night. And perhaps the most persistent, most frustrating question of all is this: why did God create Satan? Ever wonder why God created Satan? It's a question that's been puzzling Christian theology for centuries, and the answers given aren't as sensible as you might think or hope. Today, we're diving into one of the most frustrating questions that's haunted Christian theology for centuries. Why did God create Satan in the first place? If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good, wouldn't he have known that bringing such a malevolent entity into existence would only lead to chaos, suffering, and heartache? It's a dilemma that causes theological headaches, and rightfully so. It's a paradox that pits God's supposed perfection against the grim reality of evil. The official explanations, the ones taught in Sunday school and preached from the pulpit, often feel more like flimsy excuses than solid answers. When you pull at this one thread, the entire tapestry of doctrine can begin to unravel. Today, we explore three of the most significant intellectual nightmares that arise from this single, terrifying question. These aren't just philosophical games, they are deep, structural problems that challenge the very narrative of Christianity. Let's open the forbidden archives. If you ask a pastor or a theologian why God allowed Satan to exist, you will almost certainly hear two words: free will. The official story goes something like this. Satan wasn't created as an evil being. He was created as one of the highest angels, often identified as Lucifer, the light-bringer, perfect, beautiful, and without sin. According to this doctrine, God gave Lucifer, along with all other angels and humans, the profound gift of free will. Why? Because for love to be genuine, it must be chosen. A being programmed to love you is just a machine. Their affection is meaningless. God, in his infinite wisdom, desired a real, meaningful relationship with his creation. For that to happen, they had to have the ability to choose not to love him. They had to be able to say no. Lucifer, consumed by pride and wanting to be equal to God, used his free will to make that choice. He said no. He rebelled, and in doing so, he fell from grace and became Satan, the adversary. In this view, God didn't create evil, Lucifer did, through the misuse of a good gift. It sounds like a neat and tidy explanation, a sensible, logical answer. But this is where the nightmare begins. Because this defense crumbles under the weight of another one of God's core attributes: omniscience, all-knowing. If God is all-knowing, then he didn't just know that Lucifer might fall. He knew, with absolute 100% certainty, that he would. He knew the exact moment, the exact thought, the exact surge of pride that would lead to his rebellion. He knew that this single act would set off a chain reaction resulting in millennia of human suffering. He knew it would lead to the Garden of Eden, the serpent, the fall of man, and the damnation of countless souls he hadn't even created yet. He saw it all, from beginning to end, before he even said, "Let there be light," and he did it anyway. This paints a disturbing picture. It changes God from a loving father who was tragically betrayed to a cosmic engineer who knowingly designed a flawed system, fully aware of the catastrophic failure to come. He pressed the on switch, knowing it would lead to a universe filled with pain, torment, and eternal separation from him for billions of his own children. The free will defense forces a horrifying choice. Is a universe with free will and unimaginable, eternal suffering truly better than a universe of robots living in perfect, blissful harmony? Christian doctrine must say yes. And that conclusion is a moral nightmare. It suggests that our suffering is a price God was willing to pay for a principle. If the free will defense leaves us with a God who seems reckless, our second nightmare presents a God who seems far more calculating, and perhaps even more terrifying. This is the idea that Satan is not an accident, but a necessity. This line of thought argues that for God's plan to work, evil must exist. How can we appreciate the light if we've never known darkness? How can we understand forgiveness if we've never known sin? How can there be heroes without a villain? In this theological framework, Satan isn't just a rogue agent who broke the system. He is a fundamental part of the system itself. He is the ultimate antagonist in God's grand, divine story. His role is to test humanity, to provide the opposition against which faith is forged, and to make the final victory of Christ more meaningful. We see this dynamic play out explicitly in the biblical book of Job. Here, Satan appears in God's heavenly court. He isn't a rebel hiding in the shadows, he's there, talking with God. God actually points out Job's righteousness, and Satan, whose name in Hebrew, Satan means, the accuser challenges God, suggesting Job is only faithful because he's been blessed. So God gives Satan permission to torment Job, to destroy his life, all to test the man's faith. In this story, Satan acts less like a mortal enemy and more like a cosmic prosecuting attorney, or even a tool used by God to prove a point. And here lies the second nightmare. If Satan is a necessary part of the plan, then he is, in a functional sense, working for God. He may be an unwilling pawn or a witting collaborator, but his actions ultimately serve God's purpose. This shatters the simple narrative of a black and white war between good and evil. It suggests a disturbing, symbiotic relationship. God the director, Satan the lead actor in a cosmic tragedy where we, humanity, are the collateral damage. This makes God directly complicit in the evil he supposedly despises. He doesn't just allow evil to happen, he uses it. He needs it. The pain, the fear, the temptation that Satan brings into the world are not bugs in the system, they are features. They are the furnace in which saints are made. But what does that say about the billions who are burned by that furnace instead of being forged? Their suffering becomes mere plot development. Their damnation becomes a necessary statistic to make the story more compelling. This paradox turns the loving Father into a divine dramatist, a celestial puppet master who orchestrates both the crime and the punishment, and that is a profoundly chilling thought. Our first two nightmares were theological, born from the internal logic of Christian doctrine, but our third and final nightmare comes from outside the church walls. It comes from the dusty records of history itself. What if the character of Satan, the great cosmic enemy of God, wasn't a divine revelation at all? What if he was borrowed? To understand this, we have to travel back to the origins of the Old Testament. In the earliest Hebrew texts, the entity we call Satan simply doesn't exist as we know him today. As we mentioned, the Hebrew word Satan was a title, not a name. It meant the adversary or the accuser. This Satan was an angel, a member of God's divine council, whose job was to test and accuse humanity. He was an antagonist, yes, but not the ultimate source of all evil. So where did the pitchfork-wielding, soul-stealing Prince of Darkness come from? The historical evidence points to a powerful influence from a neighboring empire, Persia. During the 6th century BC, the Jewish people were in exile in Babylon, which was then conquered by the Persian Empire. There, they were exposed to one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism was profoundly dualistic. It taught that the universe was a battleground between two opposing co-eternal forces. On one side was Ahura Mazda, the all-good, wise creator god. On the other was Angra Mainyu, also known as Ahriman, the destructive, evil spirit who was the source of all darkness, lies, and death. Sound familiar? Historians and biblical scholars widely agree that these ideas began to seep into Jewish thought. The concept of a cosmic battle between a good God and a powerful, independent, evil entity was a powerful way to explain the suffering in the world. Over the centuries, this imported idea evolved. The heavenly accuser, Satan, slowly merged with the concept of the great cosmic enemy, Angra Mainyu. Later, this figure was combined with other elements. The serpent from Genesis, a misunderstood passage about a Babylonian king in the book of Isaiah that mentions Lucifer, son of the morning, and various pagan deities. This is the third and perhaps most devastating nightmare for Christian doctrine. It suggests that Satan is not a fallen angel from the beginning of time, but a theological composite, a character pieced together from a foreign religion, political allegories, and centuries of mistranslation. If this is true, then the entire doctrinal edifice built around him, the war in heaven, the temptation in the garden, the spiritual warfare that defines much of Christian life is built not on a divine rock, but on the shifting sands of human history and cultural exchange. The great enemy of God, the ultimate source of evil, might just be a foreign imposter, a ghost assembled from the myths of a forgotten empire. So we are left in the dark, surrounded by these three doctrinal nightmares. The free will defense, which paints God as a reckless creator who knowingly unleashed eternal suffering upon the universe. The necessary evil paradox, which turns God into a manipulative puppet master, using Satan as a tool and our pain as a plot device. And the historical record, which suggests the devil himself is a man-made concept, a patchwork of borrowed myths and mistranslations. The question, why did God create Satan, remains. It echoes through the halls of theology, unanswered. The official explanations, when held up to the light, seem to create more problems than they solve. They reveal cracks in the very foundation of the story. The archives of history and theology are filled with uncomfortable truths, and the story of Satan may be the most unsettling of them all, a dark mirror reflecting not just the nature of evil, but the troubling and paradoxical nature of God himself. It is a nightmare from which Christian doctrine has never truly awoken. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this exploration valuable, consider subscribing to our channel and enabling notifications so you don't miss our next journey into the forbidden archives. Thank you for watching.